Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Raw Men. This time, we are interviewing Jonathan Steele. Mr. Steele is a activist, and it's been a while since I talked to just a regular old activist on the streets. He is the one who invited me to come to speak to McKinney ISD a month or so ago when they were leading prayer in their independent school district meetings. And he has some updates, and I understand there's been some things in the news, and he's going to be telling us a story about how all this how all this happened. Mr. Steele, introduce yourself, please, and welcome aboard.
My name is Jonathan Steele. I work for McKinney ISD. I have two children in McKinney Independent School District as well. One of them's a junior. I don't want to think about that. And the other one's a seventh grader. Both in this district.
Somehow or other, your volume has gone down a little bit. Can we adjust that? Can you bring your volume up?
How's this?
Try again.
One more again.
There we go. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, so when all this started, we want to give me the background story.
Okay, so I started working for the district about 2.5 years ago. And before that, I've been a parent in McKinney ISD since 2007 when I moved down here with my kids. When I started working with the district, it was concerning to me that I started working as a substitute teacher. I went into various campuses across the district, and there were basically little Christian shrines in a lot of the classrooms. In the hallways, there were signs over the doors with Bible verses posted. And being that my family and I are atheists, I was concerned about the entanglement of religion in our public schools. As things progressed, there were more and more instances of teachers, staff members actually going sort of above and beyond to show their Christianity within the classroom setting. So that was.
And how do they show their Christianity?
Well, I know that in a couple of classrooms, one of them's a disciplinary classroom where it's almost like an enforced study hall. A couple of paraprofessionals in there regularly sit down, and while they're not directly interacting with students, have Bible study and sit down and read through their Bible and sort of shout questions back and forth to one another.
Well, that would be annoying.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so how long has this been going on? You said about 2 years?
Well, what I have witnessed has been about 2 years. It's apparently been going on a lot longer than that.
And you said that you're concerned about this because you're atheist, and it should be. I would think that anybody would be concerned about this. Of course, this is Texas, where we have things like the Merry Christmas bill that are laws that encourage teachers, honestly, encourage teachers to divulge their religious beliefs and share them with the classroom, which I think is wholly inappropriate. And that might be fine if you're in the dominant religion in that demographic, but what if you're not? Of course, this law just outs you for that.
Well, here's one thing about it. The actual board policy for McKinney ISD states specifically that there shall be no majoritarian election of religion in the district. So it doesn't matter if you're the majority or the minority. It's not supposed to happen. And that's the board's own policy.
Okay, and yet, you invited me to come speak at the McKinney ISD meeting, and they were leading those meetings with prayer. And you said that they're leading prayer, and they're leading students in Bible study and everything in the classrooms. They have religious shrines all over this and that.
They're not leading students in Bible study. The students are doing their own thing, but they are conducting their own personal devotional while the students are present.
I see. So they can say they're not doing what they're doing.
Sort of, yes.
Okay, so when we were there, we met a couple of interesting gentlemen that were the last two speakers in the video that I uploaded about this. Links below. Those last two guys, I understand, got in the news a little bit after that presentation, after their testimony.
Yes, sir. Um, when they spoke, several in the group of parents that I deal with um, decided to kind of find out who these guys were, why they were interested in coming to the meeting and expressing their views. And it became readily apparent that they were staff members in McKinney ISD. In looking through their Twitter feeds, there were some pretty disturbing things for teachers to be posting in a public manner.
Do you have any examples of these disturbing things?
Well, there was one picture of a littered street after the last Houston Pride Parade, and one of the teachers who tweeted about it was um, basically expressed that, well, homosexuals defile their own bodies. Why should they care about a street? They referred to Islam as a satanic death cult.
Which is ironic, I think, for Christians to say, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I don't think they quite understand their own history.
Or even necessarily what a death cult is.
It was not necessarily spread by the quality of its peace, but more often by the quality of its violence.
Yeah. So I was going to ask a question earlier when you mentioned that you had these concerns because you didn't want other people's religion foisted on your kids, and if you happen to share the same religion, well, then maybe you wouldn't notice if like a lot of other parents are. Would you say that other parents are in agreement with you, or how is your standing there?
Well, there is a moderate contingent of parents who are for actual constitutional rights and actual adherence to the Constitution, and that religion is something that should be out of the public sphere in terms of public school, government, and things like that, and should be left to the parents. And then there is the group of, well, I mean, it's pretty clear they're Trumpers, and I hate to sort of paint everybody with a broad brush, but uh, extremely conservative, right wing Christians, evangelicals who think that, contrary to all the facts, the United States is a Christian nation, and we were founded on Christian principles.
And it doesn't seem to matter what you show them. I mean, a lot of these people, when they tout the Constitution, for example, they don't seem to be aware that there is another amendment before that second one.
Yes, and one of the things that I hear quite regularly is that the First Amendment guarantees the freedom of religion, not the freedom from religion.
Which again, they're just not thinking this through. And so these two guys went up and made these statements to the board, and they weren't just talking about gays, and they weren't just talking about Muslims. They also mentioned atheists, and they referred to the Freedom from Religion Foundation specifically. I remember them calling them criminal thugs and bullies.
I thought that was pretty rich.
Yeah, especially if you've met Dan Barker. What a sweet guy.
I know. And Annie Laurie Gaylor. She is, the both of them are sort of the two people that you would want to, like, just chill with.
Yeah, and so it was a little frustrating to listen to these guys, and then I have to admit that I didn't have probably the best reaction to meeting them. I remember following them out the door to a foot or two behind them to share my opinion about how I felt about them lying about us.
Yes.
About atheists, activists, secularists, just in general. And they, even though I'm outnumbered 2-1, they opted not to, let's say, discuss it further.
Yes. Well, here's one of the fun things about Texas. The Texas Open Meetings laws state that any disruption of a government assembly is a Class B misdemeanor. So it's probably a good thing that it didn't progress further.
Yeah,
even
well,
if
it
it
would have
were
been a
outside.
spirited conversation.
Yes.
Anyway, enough of that. I was so frustrated with one guy trying to calm the other one down, saying, "Well, that's just what they do." So I'm a they, right?
Yes, I'm
So
right
I
there
fit
with
into
you.
the conspiracy theory thing now. So what happened after that?
Well, the group that we have here, the McKinney area secularists, secular humanists, is fairly tight knit. We keep together pretty much solely online, but we also have some in person get-togethers, lunches, breakfasts, a couple of things. We're having oddly enough, an open carry picnic next month, and we kind of got together and said, we need to figure out what's going on here. We need to basically prepare for what's coming up. Um, so this has been the group that has been uh, coming together since September to try to bring this before the board, because several of us individually have contacted FFRF in order to report these infringements. And the FFRF, it does its thing. They do their thing very well. And I'm a big fan of Sam Grover. Um, and I understand this, they are dedicated to trying to find a way that does not result in costly lawsuits. And that's good for them and also for the people that are trampling on the rights of others. So we got together, we started strategizing on how we needed to approach things, and we decided the best bet was to go before the board. So starting in October at their meeting, we went before the board. We had, I believe it was 8 or 9 speakers on various subjects, primarily separation of church and state, and how that actually ties into LGBTQ rights. We spoke in October, we spoke in November, you were there when we spoke in December, and then we actually spoke just this past Tuesday at the most recent board meeting. This past Tuesday was a much more well-attended event. We had actually contacted, after the release of those tweets, we contacted the local mosque here in McKinney, and we also contacted the Council on American Islamic Relations in Dallas-Fort Worth with Nakia Natala, who is their staff attorney. And so there were a group of us from McKinney area secular humanists and a group from CARE and the mosque to speak. And one thing that, bringing back the December meeting, you weren't allowed to speak because you don't reside inside of McKinney ISD boundary. Everyone who spoke on Tuesday night resides in the McKinney ISD boundary. So it was no longer just a bunch of angry atheists pissed off at Christianity. It was a group of secularists and LGBTQ activists and very just absolutely wonderful Muslim community that is here in McKinney speaking to ask the school district to stop promoting Christianity in the classroom in public.
This is the thing that I just can't understand about, the people that want to promote their religion in this way. They don't understand what freedom of religion, or certainly what freedom from religion means, or that you have to have freedom from religion in order to have freedom of religion. They don't understand that whenever the state even seems to have picked a favorite religion, then automatically every other religious denomination is subservient to that, or second class citizenry. I mean, they have to bow to the customs and courtesies that the state wants to endorse. And so when it's Christianity, everybody's already Christian and they're fine with that. Okay, well, then they don't think there's a problem. But once they have to account for someone else's religious beliefs, say another religion that is gaining in dominance, and now we are a Muslim country, for example. Well, then we should have been secularist all the time. Well, why weren't we secularist as a Christian nation? And then we know certain denominations don't get favored very well. I mean, like the Mormons, for example. I was raised by a Mormon family. They had a Mormon execution order that was issued in Illinois or Missouri in the 1800s, and it stayed on the books until 1976, which allowed state militias to murder Mormon families simply for being Mormon. That's men, women, and children. So this is what happens when the state seems to favor a religion. Everybody else is going to be punished by it. And they don't understand that you shouldn't be granting privileges. You have the right to believe whatever the hell you want. That's fine. But you shouldn't get special privileges for that. And that's where a lot of this is coming from. We wouldn't have to worry about which religion is dominant at the time if no religion ever got special providence.
Exactly. One of the things about religion that I found, I was raised Catholic. Good old Catholic boy from Tennessee. Imagine that. But one of the things that I've always found about religion, and looking back, is that religion is always set to divide. There is always a group of haves and have-nots. When you think about the concept of heaven and hell, there is the group that has that special pass, that backstage pass to go to heaven, and the group that doesn't. And the way that you identify yourself is as a have, and the way you identify others is as have-nots. That is the way it is in Christianity. It is the way it is in Islam. It is the way it is in Buddhism, the people who attain enlightenment and the people who do not attain enlightenment. Pretty much every religion has that division between those who are good and those who are bad. And the whole point is to try to separate yourself from the other. And so that's the truly divisive nature of religion. And it doesn't really matter which religion it is. And that's one of the things that when it comes into the classroom and the teacher says, well, I'm a conservative Christian, and they decorate their classroom to make sure that everyone knows that.
Sorry. I forgot to turn the phone off.
That's all right. When a teacher in the classroom goes about indicating that, they are trying to say, I am part of the special group, and anybody who doesn't think like I do is part of the other group. And that in and of itself creates a very sort of combative atmosphere if you're not part of the teacher's special group.
I remember hearing what's his name, the movie star from Scientology, Tom Cruise, right, who said that if he passes a car wreck, he has to get out and do what he can to help, because being a Scientologist means he's the special person that has to be the one that everybody has to rely on. And
actually, no. Getting out of the car to help is being a decent human being, and no faith, no religious tradition has a lock on that.
But I've heard Christians say the same thing as the Scientologists do, and then I've heard Sikhs say the same thing. And this is why they have that ceremonial knife that they have to carry, that if there's ever a problem, the Sikh is the one who has to be responsible for everyone's protection. That they all put themselves in this special exalted position simply because they believe impossible nonsense for no good reason. It's just which brand of fairy tale do you buy into that makes you better than everyone else? That's what religion seems
and that actually proves the point. That actually proves the point. Scientology, Catholicism, conservative Christianity, Sikhism, Islam, Shinto, Buddhism, when you boil it all down, you end up getting back to humanist values that somebody has co-opted in order to form a power structure. Because if you have people in each one of those religions that is saying, I'm supposed to be the good guy, well, then that's actually independent of the trappings that they have chosen to put on it. And it just proves our point that it's being a human being, not being a Sikh, a Muslim, a Christian, a Jew, whatever it is.
So in your activism here, did you get any pushback from from anybody really?
Well, one of the things about speaking before the board is you have to give your name and address when you step up to
As
the
a matter
podium.
of public record that's available on video and all that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um, and then also in my first address to the board, I said I work for the district. I'm. This is who I am. Um, yes, there are people in the district, in my own campus, that look at me sideways. One teacher was actually, he actually came to me in the hallway and stopped me and said, hey, you really sure you want to do this? Is this something that, because we're entitled to display our faith in our classrooms. That's another thing that really gets me is that they don't quite understand what the law actually says. Because they think that, oh, well, this is just fine and dandy. And we have come to find out, and I've said this before the board multiple times, their own policy says you cannot have personal, devotional, religious displays in the classroom. And that's throw out federal law. This is what the board said.
Yeah, and then with regard to the federal law, you always hear Christians complaining that that they made it illegal for children to pray in schools, which of course is nothing even close to the truth. What?
That has never been the case.
Yeah, I mean,
Children have always been able to pray in school.
it's just that Protestant.
Member,
It's just that Catholic kids cannot be led in prayer by a Protestant teacher. It's you can't have the teacher just have direct the prayer in the classroom as if everybody's part of the same congregation. That's what they made illegal was the teachers who were supposed to be secular aren't supposed to control the religious beliefs of the students in the classroom. Why does no Christian understand this?
Because they believe that their First Amendment right to free speech trumps everyone else's First Amendment right to freedom of religion and from religion. I choose to be free of religion. I choose that for myself. My children choose that for themselves. We are free of religion.
So when this person comes and tells you, "You sure you want to do this?" What happened after that? What has the district done after that, or what has anybody else done after that?
Well, we have been fighting legally through FFRF for over 2 years. The current iteration of our struggle and coming before the board has been going on since October. And up until actually this week, it has been sort of a stonewall. The board they're not prohibited, but they don't have to comment on anything that they haven't put on the agenda. So if they don't put separation of church and state on the agenda, you can talk to your blue in the face, but they don't have to say anything other than thank you.
Yeah, I caught that. You mentioned that when the most recent meeting was much well attended. It was quite well attended. The one I went to, I remember the place was completely packed.
And this was even better. We had people in the lobby and out the door. And the board meeting starts off with the pledges of allegiance, the invocation, then they do a sort of a learning showcase, which is
and by invocation, we are talking about where everybody stands up so that they can pay homage to the imaginary friend and say, "Our Heavenly Father," blah, blah, blah. And this is being led by the chairman of the board right?
Well, yeah. It switches up between board members from month to month.
Well, didn't they also hold this? Didn't they also hold this in a mega church?
That was actually convocation for the staff, and I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
The invocation is a prayer and it is delivered by a member of the board or the superintendent. I've never seen the superintendent do it, but I'm sure that he's in the rotation somewhere. And my big issue is they do it from the rostrum in front of the big McKinney ISD seal behind their little desk where they represent us as a community. And I feel that right there is the excessive entanglement of religion and government.
What I've seen, here in the South, here in Texas, is that
Uh,
they think they're representing the community because they think they are the community. They don't
well,
think that the Muslims are part of the community. They certainly don't think that the atheists are part of it. Well, I think they put atheists and Muslims both together as not being part of the community at all. We are the people to be ostracized.
well, we're
Well,
all going to hell because we don't believe like them. But here's the thing: even down in Austin, at the State Board of Education members or State Board of Education meetings, the members of the board, when they deliver their invocation, everything that I've ever seen has them stepping down from their seat and delivering it from the public podium, where members of the public come to address the State Board of Education. That right there is fine because they're no longer, when they're down on our level, they're no longer proselytizing from their position as a government official. I'm good with that. I would rather them have a moment of silence, but you know what? I'm good with that. Because at that point, because you're a member of the public, you have to be able to allow other members of the public to direct an invocation. And that means somebody from the local mosque, somebody from the local temple, somebody who is a secularist.
yeah, but when does that ever happen? I mean, we have, whenever there's a board meeting or a city council meeting or something like that, there's always a stipulation that you have to be part of an established church, a brick and mortar building, which exists in that community. What secularist has a brick and mortar building dedicated to secularism? That doesn't happen.
Well, we're working on that. There's the Fellowship of Free Thought in Dallas. There is the McKinney Area Secular Humanists. Yes,
Yeah,
we
but
are
they don't have their
predominantly.
own building.
Well, we can make that work out.
Okay.
There are a lot of churches that take up temporary residents actually in our school campuses on the weekends because they don't have their own building.
And then our schools take up temporary residence in the churches, as you were about to tell me.
Pretty much. So the McKinney ISD has several different events throughout the year. The first thing in the beginning of the year is what's called staff convocation. And it is an assembly of the entire staff with a very few exception of people who have to be on duty no matter what time it is. But they all come together at Prestonwood Baptist Church, which is the giant Fort God mega church down in West Plano. And we have a big hoorah. Usually they will have one of the high school campuses fine arts groups come in and perform. Either it's the choirs, the band, the orchestra. They'll all sort of give a little presentation, and it's actually a magnificent presentation. We have some of the finest musicians and artists in the country in our schools. But after that, and particularly this year, the superintendent got up and said, somebody asked me, "Are you going to pray?" Well, yes, I am. And I understand that this may offend some of you, but I'm okay with that. So right off the bat, he said, I'm okay with, pissing off a sizable chunk of the people who work for me and the people who we entrust with our children. And the other thing is there are students still present in the building when this happens. There is a nice podium with a crowned Latin cross on it that everybody gives their speech from the superintendent down to the board president, to other community members, or actually I should say administration members who have something to offer. And then this particular year we had a guy named Rick Rigsby, who apparently makes his living quoting people who have said better punchlines than he can come up with. So we got 3 hours or 2 hours of him quoting smarter people. But then you go on to graduation. It's held in the same church. You have your podium with the Latin cross with the crown over it. Directly above the podium in the ceiling is a stained glass crown cross. And every speaker, valedictorian, salutatorian, anybody who gets up to speak at graduation stands behind and under a Christian cross. And the thing is that last year, in response to a letter from FFRF, McKinney ISD said, yeah, we'll cover that up. No, they didn't. And so we're trying to figure out why they can't do that. Why they can't actually follow through on what they're promising to do.
And why has this not been on the agenda? Because when I was there in what was it, December, I'd heard comments that that there's been this has been going on for months or years, and they've been pleading to have this matter brought onto the agenda, and that hasn't happened either.
Well, here's the way you get on the agenda. You have to have 2 members of the board or the board president say, I want this on the agenda.
Okay. No, that's why it hasn't happened then.
Yeah. So the simple fact of the matter is they don't want it on the public agenda. You can ask for it, but they don't, they can say, well, thank you. Love you, mean it, bye.
So you remember those 2 guys that came up to give their talks after I was not allowed to give mine, and that said that the FFRF were bullies and thugs, and they said, if I remember correctly, that atheists were all insane and communists, and essentially baby killers and something along those lines. I mean, whenever they bring up atheists, they had to talk about Stalin for some reason. Never Carl Sagan or Isaac Asimov. No, it's just it always has that sort of thing.
One of the interesting things about Stalin is that he was actually a seminary student before he joined the Communist Party, and also after he came to power, he wanted to keep the church, because what is one thing that the church is really good at? Keeping people in line.
Yeah.
So yes, there was a state church. Was it the Orthodox Church? No, but it was pretty close because, well, Marx kind of had it right. Plain suit on. Religion is the opiate of the masses. It calms people down. It keeps them in line.
So these guys who not to contradict you, but we're obviously not calm or in line. They're spewing all kinds of propagandist hate, as if they've never encountered as secularists before. I would have loved to have had an opportunity to have a serious talk with these guys. It would have been great. But
you would have had to bring your crayons in order to get through to these guys.
Well, as I understand it, then what happened after that? I mean, we ended up with them spewing all this hate in social media, and their school teachers, and now CARE is involved. The Council for American Islamic Relations, and so they're getting a lot of attention from the LGBT. And there was the video that I did when, of course, there was a lot of commentary about the attitudes and the hateful things that these guys said there. So I'm just assuming that all of that accumulated in what happened next.
Yes. I mean, it's one thing to go in and just, as a regular guy, say, I disagree with this, and we need to have a discussion. The problem is that this wasn't them coming in to say we need to have a discussion. This was them trying to advance their own particular ideology. If you remember correctly, one of them was wearing an InfoWars shirt as he spoke at the podium. Well,
how much more credible can you be?
I believe the term, and pardon my French here, is batshittery.
Yeah. So these guys express all their hatred against like every other demographic that isn't them, in pure InfoWars style. And then I understand that parents, other parents, including some Christian parents and Jewish parents and so on, started to get upset that they have these guys teaching their students.
Yes. The backlash from the parents, once it became obvious who these guys were, was resounding. The Parent Teacher Student Association or Student Organization for that particular campus found out, and there was a significant backlash from the community, wanting to know why these two people were still employed. And I can't speak to the veracity of it, so I'm going to sit here and be a jerk and spread a rumor. But the scuttlebutt has been, this is the worst kept secret on that campus about these two guys. The conservative Christians love them because, well, they're conservative Christians too. But everybody else is kind of like, wow, these guys are a piece of work.
Well, you just always mystified me how people can profess themselves to be, full of love and grace, and at the same time, everything that they spew is a hateful judgment against somebody else.
I am reticent to quote Bill Maher on anything because he's a circus organizer. That's what he is. His movie Religulous, he actually sat down with some conservative evangelical Christians, and at the end, I thought one of the coolest things he said was, after they prayed over him and wished him well, he said, "I want to thank you for being Christ-like and not Christian."
Yeah. There was an old saying that there was only been one Christian, and they killed him early on. All right, so what's going to happen now?
Well, one of the great things about this is that over the last 4 months, as much as it's felt like we've been bashing our head against the wall, excuse me, we have actually made some headway, and we have opened up lines of communication between secularists, between moderate Christians, and I should say liberal Christians as well, with our Muslim friends in the community, with Jewish friends in the community. And it has been really just within the last couple of months that we have come together, and and it's not just been the angry atheists who have recognized this, but it's also kind of given some courage to minority religious populations to step forward and say, hey, this is wrong. And it's not just one or the other of us, but there's a whole group. This is our community. This is our school district. This is who we want to be as a community. We want to be part of a vibrant, varied, wonderful collection of individuals from all different backgrounds. And that really manifested on Tuesday night. We had, there's only 10 speaker slots. Everybody gets 3 minutes apiece. There were 2 of us who are secularists or atheists, just go on and call it that. That's what we are. We had one of the former counselors from the campus where those 2 teachers were, and her transgender child who spoke. Her transgender child was the first lesbian prom queen at McKinney High School back in 2015. We also had 4 or 5 people from the local mosque who spoke. And then we had 1 member of the opposition who spoke, who wanted to talk about how First Amendment grants you the right to say whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want. And it wasn't right that these 2 guys resigned over it. So it was actually a wonderful coming together of the community. And because of that, the board has, I think, recognized that we're not just a little group of 1 or 2 here and there, but we are actually a force to be reckoned with in this community. And because of that, just even within the last week or so, the lines of communication have begun to open. So I feel that I
Can
don't
you
want to take this.
Can you expand what you mean about the lines of communication opening?
I can't at this moment. Okay. There are things that are going on, and I don't want to poison the well.
And I shouldn't have interrupted. I was just very curious. I should have let you continue.
No, that's all right. That's all right. there are, because we're in Texas, because of where we are, because of the sort of pushback that we've gotten from the community, we have to understand that the board, even if they want to do what is right, they're elected officials and they have a base that they have to play to. And so there's a strategy that's involved in getting things done. And, as much as it infuriates those of us who say, there's a real easy way to do this, do what's right, you have to respect that as well. And so we've been getting some good communication where it's just been, hey, we show up at the board meeting and they say, thank you for speaking, next, to where there's actually some communication coming back. There are probably a bunch of different reasons for it. I'm sure that what happened with those two middle school teachers, is a big, big part of that, because there is a huge public backlash. It's a black eye for the district. There's no getting around that. But also, coming up, and this is something that's near and dear to my heart because I have an autistic son. But recently, the Department of Education found that Texas was not living up to its commitment to our special needs and special populations students. So, as a consequence of that, there will be on-site reviews in every district every 6 years, 25 campuses in every district. So they're getting ready to have a whole lot of people coming in from the outside. And I'm sure that this is not something that they want to have to deal with in addition to that. So I think that we kind of hit a lucky tilt, for lack of a better term, on this. And so I'm really excited moving forward with this, because I'm hoping that, if nothing else, we can get on the agenda for next month. And I feel very confident that we will.
Well, I certainly hope you do. I think we've pretty much covered this. I would still like, if those two guys that resigned, that we ran into, the InfoWars guys, for lack of a better description, if I would still like to have a conversation with them, just to see if can you fix that poisoned perspective, where we have such an unrealistic and hateful view of things. I would love to have a meeting of the minds and see if there can be some kind of communication in that. And as far as the board, I'm sure that there's more to announce upcoming, and we will through my channel at some point. And Mr. Steele, I'm going to let you close out. Say whatever you want, and then we'll finish it up.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on your show. It has been a pleasure and an honor. And quite honestly, my daughter was like, when I told her that I was going to be speaking with you on your podcast, she was like, "Dad, you are now the coolest person that I know." And so she's a big fan. We're all a big fan, and I really appreciate what you do for our community, both here in Texas and around the world. Actually, I know that you just came back from Europe, and I hope at some point in time to come see you again when you give one of your lectures. So from there, like I said, I'm hopeful that this will come to a mutually acceptable outcome where we can come together as a community and support our wonderful students here at McKinney ISD, and not have this trivial crap overshadow the magnificent educational opportunities we provide here in McKinney.
On that note, we'll close it up. Thank you very much, Jonathan Steele.
Thank you.